UFC 307 is about to be here on Saturday, and I'm starting to get excited for it. And a lot of that excitement came from the conversations that I had. So this week, of course, bring back Lala, aka CJ, and we talked through a few things that already occurred. And I bring on Wyatt from Fight Society, and we talk about the things that are to come when it comes to UFC 307. As always, if you haven't liked, shared, or subscribed, make sure you do that. And also make sure you do that for any of the people that we often work with. So make sure you're doing that for Fight Society. But without further ado, let's get to it. In light of Benoit Saint-Denis' eye getting exploded by Renato Moicano in Paris. Was it actually? Yeah, it was in Paris at Accor Arena, in front of his family and friends, his graduating class from high school. We wanted to kind of go through and kind of talk about the lightweight division because it really got shaken up a little bit. I mean, we kind of knew that was going to happen going into this fight, that this was going to be a pivot. Either Benoit Saint-Denis was going to like catapult back into relevance after getting destroyed by Dustin Poirier, or Renato Moicano was going to take his into the upper echelon, and I guess it's the Money Moicano time frame. But what is your thought? And we're kind of talking about it, but what's your thought on who Moicano should face after that win?
Yeah, I think he has a couple options, but the number one option I feel would be Paddy. I think he can make a case for this fight. I do like the idea of them headlining or coaching. It's tough, right? I
Yeah.
get all those little ones confused, but yeah, I think if they can headline tough and then followed up by headlining a pay-per-view, that would be a good matchup for him and Paddy as well. Honestly, he is 35, and I don't think he's washed by any means, but I just think, time is against him a bit, and it depends on what he really wants to do. Does he, just want to fight because he loves it and wants to make money? Paddy's the fight for him, I think. Does he want to, continue to getting the belt, winning a championship? Then he wants to be looking at a rematch with Fiziev, Gamrot, fighting Gamrot, or Benny, who has a target on his back.
Yeah.
By everyone, as they should. I think those are the best matchups for him. And hey, if he fights Benny and takes that spot, then he could possibly fight someone like Dan afterward, depending on what shakes out in the higher rankings up there.
Yeah, no, I agree. I know he's been calling out Dan. He called him. What did he say? He called him a turtle in a tree.
Why call him a turtle in a tree?
He said,
I saw a picture of that. It didn't make sense to me. I was like,
he said Dan Hooker being in the top 5 is like a turtle being in a tree. Don't make sense. I'm like, that was good. I like that was gold.
But where did that even come from, though?
It came from Renato Moicano being crazy. And for me, he's the best person on the microphone in the UFC at this point. He's the best. But
that's not say a turtle in a tree.
I know. But I think you nailed it. Like, it really just depends on his motivation. Is he just about money? Because if money is number one, then Paddy Pimblett is the fight, man. That's the fight. And I know a lot of people, and you kind of went down this one on the Reddit post that you put, but a lot of people are talking about the fact that it doesn't alter his contract. But even not knowing all the ins and outs of the contract, I know that that's going to bring more prestige, and prestige always factors into a contract. And so if he's able to go into his next contract with the prestige of, hey, I beat one of your most popular fighters in the division. I've been a main event multiple times. if not main event, on the main card of a numbered card, like that's going to factor in majorly into what would probably be his final contract in the UFC, considering the fact that he's 35. So, I mean, like now is the time to capitalize. And it's just like Masvidal. When Masvidal got to that certain age and he was like, man, things are going right, time to capitalize. And I feel like he's everything that he's doing right now is the right step. So whatever he chooses, and I really think it's going to be Patty Pimblett. It's honestly out of Patty Pimblett or Dan Hooker.
Hmm.
Um, it's going to be Patty Pimblett because Dan Hooker's not fighting back. He's not. He ain't doing it. Because why?
No. Yeah, he doesn't need to, honestly.
No, no. So I think the fight is going to be Patty Pimblett. I can't see it any other way.
I
I really
agree.
can't.
I think the only concern or roadblock I really see there is him Moicano breaking his shoulder or collarbone, whatever it was that's broken. Like, how long is he going to be out? I'm sure he's going to need, or I'm just assuming he's going to need surgery for that. I mean, how
It
long is
looked
Patty
really
going to wait?
bad.
You
It
know,
looked really bad. I looked and I saw actually that actually occurred in training camp.
I saw
That
that too.
actually, yeah. So
So wait, like it was broken or was it fractured and then he broke it during the fight?
I don't know what
Oh,
happened.
okay.
I'm
Okay.
very confused on in the post fight. Somebody asked him about his health and how fast he wants to go back, and he said he's as soon as possible.
Who said that?
So
Moicano?
yeah, he did.
He's gonna go visit Pereira and get some magic witchery or what?
I don't know what he's going to do, but he said as soon as possible. So he said he's ready to go.
I don't
So
think you're ready to go, sir, but I'm sure mentally you're ready to go.
mentally he's ready.
Hmm.
Mentally.
Yeah,
So
but
what
how
do
long
you?
is Patty gonna wait for that though?
Yeah, it just depends on how hurt he is. But
Because
what do you?
Patty's fresh, fresh as a
Patty is
daisy.
fresh, very fresh. What do you think about Benoit Saint Denis though?
Okay, first of all, I don't think he was fraud checked. I think he needs some rest. Get you some rest. Okay. I think he's what, 28 or something? Super young.
Hmm.
I think he needs to get some rest, and when he comes back, it depends on what's happening in the division. But I think he can maybe take on someone like RDA or even Jalen Turner. That might be a good opportunity to get back in the win column for him.
Yeah, I would agree that he does need to take a little bit of time away. I would like to see him against somebody like him against Ludovic Klein. He was on the card.
Mm,
That's a tough fight. That's a very difficult fight. But if you've given yourself enough time, I think that would be a decent way to come back. I don't want to see him against an older fighter like Bobby Green or somebody like that because I honestly I only want to see Bobby Green in legacy fights now.
mm,
I think if Benoit Saint Denis takes a little time, come back against Ludovic Klein or Diego Fajeda, somebody like that, who's just outside the top 15, I think that would be a good way to come back. I think Jalen Turner. I think Jalen Turner gives him problems. I think
well,
he does.
yeah, yeah, I agree. Yeah, I don't want to see him fight outside of the rankings, to be honest.
I think the reason I put him, I have him fight somebody outside the rankings is because he's got two TKO or KO losses. So it's almost like, hey, let's prove that you still belong here. And I think that he can beat other people,
Hmm.
but like at this point, like they kind of got to see it.
Hmm.
So
That's true. I mean, what do you think about him versus Fiziev?
Benoit Saint Denis against Fiziev. I mean, I could see it. I could see that happening, but
I mean, they wouldn't give it to him, but
they
you
shouldn't
know, yeah,
because
just
that would
curious.
that would be him fighting up three times in a row.
Hmm.
Now, if it were a situation where Fiziev was like, I want to slow roll my way back
Hmm.
a little bit, not that Benoit Saint Denis is an easy fight because he's not.
Mm-mm.
And arguably, he won that second round.
Hmm.
Not even really argue. I feel like it's almost he won the second round, but
It's hard to,
Fiziev, it's tough. I don't even know. So speaking on Fiziev, like what do they do with him? I mean, like he coming off of a long injury layoff. Like what do they do with him?
yeah. after that fight, I immediately wanted to see a rematch. And I think that's what they do because what do you do with Gamrot right now? He didn't win that fight.
No,
And
he
I
didn't.
don't think he was winning that fight either. You know, Fiziev got hurt, and I don't think he was the reason he got hurt, but you know, that's up for
Yeah.
debate. And I also wasn't in an octagon, so don't know. He could do a rematch with Gamrot. That's the number one thing for me. He can, you know, go for a headshot, try to get Benny's ranking. That might be what he would want to do more so. He could
Poor
rematch
poor
Moicano.
Benny. Poor Benny.
That's more of
Eh,
a fight for Moicano than it is for Fiziev, but um I kind of want to see that rematch. If Chandler doesn't retire after fighting Chandler, if Chandler doesn't retire after fighting Chandler, oh my God. I'm on my Brian Cheeto Vera shit right now.
Shout
If
out Will.
we love you, Will. They give you a hard time, man. Okay. If what the fuck what was I talking about? If
If Chandler doesn't
retire after fighting
Oliveira.
Oliveira, I think that would be a good fight.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Chandler against Fiziev, that would
Yeah.
be so amazing. That would be an amazing fight.
Fiziev is in a Max Holloway situation where he's got endless possibilities, like just
Yeah.
opportunities. I mean, any of those fights I think would be really good.
Mm-hmm. No,
And I
I
think,
agree with that. I agree.
yeah.
I think
Hmm.
I think Fiziev against Gamrot is definitely number one. Like you just got
Hmm.
to run that back. We know that that wasn't, you know,
Hmm.
that wasn't the finish that Fiziev deserved to have a L in his on his win loss record. On it's kind of similar
Hmm.
to what happened with Tom Aspinall. Tom
That's
Aspinall, like
exactly what I was
that's what you're
thinking.
thinking about. Yeah,
Hmm.
like that fight didn't even get out the blocks before he got hurt against Curtis Blades.
Hmm.
And Fiziev, they fought longer,
Yeah.
but we don't know how that fight would have ended up. And arguably, like you said, Fiziev, you know, could have been winning that fight. So I would rather them run that back, especially come Gamrot just, you know, came off of a loss too against Dan Hooker. So that I think that's the fight to make 100%.
Hmm.
So, okay, now Dariush, when we were talking about it before, I feel like going back to Money Moicano. So Moicano, he's calling out Patty, right?
Hmm.
But I still feel oddly that Patty has the first right of refusal. He can choose whether he wants to fight Moicano or if he wants to fight Dariush. And if I'm Patty, I'm fighting Dariush. I'm done.
I,
I'm going to fight Dariush for
yeah.
the ranking. For the ranking, not
Yeah.
to run away from Moicano, but I feel like that's the easier of the two. I can see Moicano down the road, but my goal, if I'm Patty, is I need to get as close to the belt as I could possibly get,
I
and
don't know, dude.
in the fewest amount of moves.
Strategically, yeah. Yeah. And I would wholeheartedly agree if I was 100% sure that Patty was ready for the belt.
Look, when it comes down to it, Patty ain't beating nobody in the top five. He's not. He ain't beating nobody in the top five. Like even like okay, let's say you delete Dustin, delete Justin, delete Chandler, right? Delete them, right? Let's say that they retire, all three of
Then
them. I still don't think that he can beat. I don't think he can beat Dan. I don't think that he can beat. He definitely can't beat Islam. He can't beat Armand. He ain't beating Charles. Like
he could beat Benny
it'll be
though.
tough.
Maybe, right? Because who the hell knows? Like maybe, you know, last couple fights for Benio,
I think he can beat
you know,
Benny.
it's just a situation.
And I hate to say that because I like Benny so much, but I
Love
think he can
Benny.
beat
Yeah.
Benny. I think he can beat him. Yeah,
You deleted Dustin. I mean, I do feel possible to beat Dustin and Justin is very possible. All the stars have to align, and he's praying to every single uh God, old and new. But I think it's possible a little
I
bit.
will tell you this though, and I just thought about this. If Dustin were to fight Patty, how big of a fight would that be?
I mean, damn, I just would not see Dustin doing that. Like he is looking
No,
for. That's not the question. I know that's not the question. How big of a fight would that be? I mean, it's going to be huge because people are going to count Patty out 100%. So anticipation is going to be big. Yeah.
that would be a huge fight. That would be
Yeah.
a massive, massive, massive fight. Massive. Dustin wouldn't do it though. You're right. He's not going to do that. He's not. So
Mm-mm.
Last question on this part of the division. What does Dan Hooker do?
Man, I like Dan Hooker's position right now too. Um, okay, I think that he obviously could fight either Dustin or Justin. That could be a good retirement fight for Dustin, I think, because that's that's a rematch actually. This is a rematch. That was a crazy fight at the Apex, which
That is a Hall of Fame fight.
dude, you could hear everything. Oh, that shit was gnarly.
I mean, somebody tell me that that's not a Hall of Fame fight. Like that should be on the short list of fights that should be going into the Hall of Fame. I just don't
Yeah,
see how it's not even been talked about as being in there.
yeah. I has by the way, has Dan fought Justin? I don't remember. I don't think so.
Yes, Dan fought Justin.
Yeah.
I don't know. He hasn't. No.
So that I mean that will be a good fight, especially for Justin. That's kind of a BSD fight, kind of. BSD and Dustin.
Mm-hmm.
It'd be a good fight for him to get back in the win column, but that would be a good fight for Dan as well. If he doesn't do that and he waits, he could fight, the winner of, you know, Oliveira and Chandler.
Could could could
You
do
don't
that.
like it. You don't want him to wait.
I'm okay. Any fight that he fights right now is going to be hard. It's going to be very difficult. I am against the Dustin fight only because I feel like Dustin, his last fight should be. I honestly think that it might be Max.
Oh, well, yeah, I've been kind of
Yeah,
gunning for that one.
yeah, some sort
That
of
was,
way,
yeah.
it'll fall to end up being Max, and I don't know how, but um, I feel like
I
that's
don't,
where they will go.
it depends. It depends on how long he waits because Max's path is if he beats Ilya, I think he should be fighting Islam. I don't care. I know.
No, he
I
should be.
wanted him to fight Islam before Ilya, but anyway. And if he does that, I mean, how long is Dustin waiting? Does he? I mean, he's not in a
Yeah,
rush,
he's not
right?
in a crazy rush, but Dustin Hill at certain parts of the year he'll be like, okay, man, I got to get a fight. Kind of like how Volkanovski is, where he's just like, man, I got to get a fight in, or I'm going to lose my mind. So it's getting close to him having that itch, especially him coming off of a loss.
Mm,
He doesn't like to linger on losses like that.
mm-hmm.
So I have a feeling that he's going to, and he's talked himself into having one more fight when he really could have just walked out on that great performance in a losing effort that he had against Islam. Yeah, he's talked himself into one more fight for whatever reason, and so it's got to be something important and something big for him.
True.
So that's why I say
Fair.
Max,
Hmm.
or if Nate, rolls out, Nate is another interesting one for him. Not in terms of competitive, but in terms of eyes and legacy, that's just one fight that he just wanted to get on his resume. But I honestly don't want to see Dustin against Justin again. I really don't.
I know.
The reason I don't, and a
It's an
lot of people
option
bring
though.
that up. It
It's
is
an
an option,
option.
but the reason I don't is because one, they are very familiar with each other, and I feel like this fight is actually going to be a regression from the previous fights because they actually kind of like each other now. Um, so I don't know if I'm super hot. I mean, they're great performers. They know that this is a fight. They know that, but I don't know, man. I just feel like it'll be a regression, and maybe it's just a gut feeling. But I'm good on that fight. I'd rather
Dude,
see Justin and Dan.
I will say I was not excited for their last fight. Zero. I was not excited for it. And I mean, he knocked him out,
He
you know,
did. I
this
hated it,
wild.
but he did a great job. He knocked him out.
I loved it. That was crazy.
Yeah, I love Justin, but Dustin is just my guy. But so the last thing, and this is kind of a weird outlier. What does Connor do?
Hey, did you hear what's his name? Three Piece. He was on a podcast. I can't remember which one, but he was hinting at coming back around
Mm-hmm.
January, which is the timeline Connor is talking about,
Mm-hmm.
supposedly as well.
Mm-hmm.
Now, neither one I don't, you know, take take too seriously, but I've been wanting that fight forever.
Yeah.
So I would like to see. Jorge and Connor. I don't know. That's a good matchup for both of them.
Yeah. I
I don't
honestly think that that's
I
the
don't want
fight
to
to make.
see I don't want to see Nate and Connor. I don't want.
Nope. Nope. Would you be interested in Connor versus Chandler if Chandler loses?
I'm gonna watch it. I'm gonna watch it, but I'm also gonna watch Juliana Pena and Raquel Pennington. So
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm
Yes.
actually more excited for that than I would be for Chandler and Connor.
No, I mean I think that the Pennington and Pena fight is it's like how when trying to go to sleep and you turn on the rain sound on YouTube.
Hmm.
That's kind of what Pennington and Pena is. It's nice, soothing, fall asleep type of entertainment. That's what I'm kind of taking out of that one. But on the Connor front, like the reason I brought him up is because we're talking about lightweights and we're talking about we brought up Chandler earlier.
Hmm.
I feel like that fight it's gone. They could make it, but it's lost for as little interest as we had in it before. We've lost even more interest in it.
Agree.
I
Agree.
would
Honestly.
much, much, much rather see Conor McGregor versus Jorge Masvidal.
Hmm.
That would be a massive fight. It's too late for it to be
Yeah.
of consequence like we wanted before, but
Yeah.
I really want to see that fight, and I feel like that's a more even fight. Even
Hmm.
though I favor Conor in that fight now,
Hmm.
before I favored Jorge, but now that Jorge's speed is gone, I favor Conor because I feel like Conor still has some of his speed left. But that's the fight to make to me. That's the one. The last big
Yeah.
money fight for Conor. Big,
Hmm.
big money fight. I mean, any fight with Conor is going to be big money, but like this is the last big, big money fight for Conor.
Yeah, I agree with that. I honestly think, just to go back to Chandler, like if he loses against Charles or vice versa, do you think that either one of them should retire?
Chandler, it depends on how he looks
Mm,
because Chandler is kind of he's not on the level of a Yoel Romero as far as like athleticism, but he has that longevity of kind of being explosive for quite a while.
mm-hmm,
So it depends on how he looks. Losing to Charles Oliveira, there's nothing wrong with that. And if you don't look washed physically, but you still lose. Like I think you're okay to keep fighting, but his thing is, what is he fighting for? And if he's fighting for to win a belt and he loses to Oliveira, like I feel like that door is getting really, really close to being closed by losing to him twice. And if Oliveira loses, I still feel like he still has a little bit of runway to get back. He's
mm-hmm,
been through a lot of adversity and he could lose and still find a way to make his way back because he
mm-hmm,
still has wins over Gaethje, over Poirier, over a lot of people in the division. So I think
mm-hmm.
he'll still find his way back. Whereas Chandler
And
has wins over two people, and one
yeah,
of them is nowhere near these rankings.
yeah, that's true. And the fight with Armin was very, very close. I mean,
It
for a
was.
while there was people that were, you know, more so on the side of Charles winning that because of the submission attempts that he had against Armin. How the
Hmm.
fuck did he get out of that? It just like flashed in my mind, and I that was insane.
I
But
don't
yeah,
know. I don't
I
know.
think you're right about Oliveira and Chandler. If he is more active, if he plans to be more active, maybe. It's just how long do you want to stay and take that damage, that kind of damage, just because of how he fights, you know? What does
Some,
that contract look like for you to stay in, stay
yeah.
in, you know?
Well, somebody got to support them kids. You know what I'm saying? He got them kids. You know.
I'm not putting my feet in this.
Oh man. Okay, that's good. All right, so I got my boy Wyatt on here from Fight Society, and we are going to dig into what should be a pretty good card. I think, I hope, this weekend, UFC Salt Lake City, Pajeda versus Roundtree Jr. So before we even dig into the card, like the specifics of the card, like overall, like what are your thoughts going into this card? Like, are you excited for it? Did it kind of sneak up on you? Because it snuck up on me. I literally almost forgot that it was coming.
Man, I spent ways. Or hold on, I think I got my mic too loud. But man, I was so focused on talking shit about Noche UFC that this one snuck up on me because you know, not to be too pessimistic about it, but when we get like biggest event ever, and then we get the card, and the card delivered from a performance standpoint, but from a name value standpoint, it didn't really feel like it. And walking away with Marab as champ left me with a salty taste in my mouth. And I'm not even really I'm not the biggest Sean O'Malley, glazer, to be honest, but I think he's an entertaining style as champion. And I think that the style we got as champion is a little bit of the dark ages until we get a new champ at 135. I know that kind of sounds a little haterish from me, but I like seeing a striking battle, especially in title fights.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's just kind of what it is. And it really kind of plays into directly what we are getting at 308 with it being Pereira versus Rountree. Like, obviously, a lot of people, me included, thought that Ankalaev would be the rightful next person fight Pereira. But to your point, if we got Pereira versus Ankalaev, I think more than likely he's going to try to grab him and control him and not play that game with Pereira. But how do you see that? Do you think that played a part in how or who was chosen to fight Pereira in this matchup?
I think that they needed a main event for this card. This is just my opinion. I think they needed a main event for this card, and most of the champs are booked up. Islam's out until 25. And I think that Ankalaev was very adamant about being on that Abu Dhabi card. And so when Islam got hurt, they're like, okay, Islam's not the 308 main event. So they book Ilya and Max Holloway. And from there, they're like, okay, we got Ilya and Max. We're not going to put Pereira and Ankalaev on this card as well. And Ankalaev wants to be in Abu Dhabi. Let's get him someone else. And then they went looking through the rankings, and they were like, okay, Khalil Rountree has a Pereira call out. There's actually something to build here. So I think it was the need for a main event and Ankalaev kind of like insisting on fighting in Abu Dhabi because he was calling out Pereira to fight on the Abu Dhabi card after UFC 300. So I think it was a timing thing for Ankalaev because I know there's some people that they'll be like, Onnie Walker's not a title shot worthy win, but for me, I mean, it's obvious that he's the number one contender. It's just a matter of like UFC politics that's not getting him a title shot right now, and timing.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. And I did a video on, if is Alex Pereira ducking Ankalaev, and I felt like the reason that I even put that together was because the term ducking a lot of time has a majorly negative connotation to it, and I felt like what he was doing was he's going to take an opportunity that suits him for now while getting himself ready for that particular challenge. I didn't necessarily see it as a negative. Make money while taking an easier fight. Like Hinata Moicano literally just said that in the cage. So I kind of saw the stars aligning for Khalil to kind of jump in and take this opportunity. But that leads me to my next question. Do you think Khalil Rountree has a shot?
So objectively, yes, it's fighting and Pereira's human. Very possible that he gets knocked out. Khalil does fight very well as a counter striker. Pereira is on the front foot a lot of the time. If I'm objective about it, I'm like, yeah, Khalil could catch Pereira, but I'm going to, like, objectively, of course, it's a possibility, but I'm like 99% sure that Pereira wins this fight. I think that part of it has to do with him moving up from 85 to 205 because of that weight cut. I think that depleted his chin so much. Like, I know you mentioned on your most recent podcast that he got KO'd by Izzy personally, I think that KO by Izzy, if Pereira takes that shot at 205, I don't think he gets KO'd. That's, of course, speculation, but Pereira seemed so depleted at 85, and I don't think at 205 that shot that Izzy gave him KOs him. Maybe I'm just too much of a Pereira fan, and I'm like, this is Superman out here. But short answer, objectively, yeah, Khalil does have a great chance, even if he's like minus 500 or Pereira's a minus 500 favorite. But I'm very confident in Pereira. But things happen. This is fighting.
True, and that's kind of what I was leaning towards. Like, you never know, and I do think that Khalil carries more power than Izzy, even in that particular wild exchange. And that's a very good point of him being depleted at 185. And that could definitely factor into him being KO'd. We've seen that a lot. You know, we saw TJ Dillashaw get destroyed by somebody who isn't necessarily a power puncher when he went down. So, you know, that could definitely factor in. I think that Khalil does have a little bit more than a puncher's chance, but it is slim pickings, even though I do kind of wish it happens. I'm not gonna lie to you. I hope it happens.
Dude, I'm a huge Pereira fan, and the feel good story of Khalil Rountree is like, you know, you can't hate on it, especially like, you know, he was overweight, basically just went to a kickboxing gym to lose weight, and now he's fighting for a world title. It's one of those things where it's like, only in the UFC, man. That's part of the thing about fighting that spoiled other sports for me is the characters. As much as people will tell you it's only about the fights, I'm a hardcore, it's only about the fights. It's for damn sure about the people involved too and the stories and stuff. Like, without the stories, I think there's significantly less attention on the sport. And I think everybody can relate to having like an uphill battle, whether it's Pereira dealing with alcohol and working at a tire shop, or it's Khalil needing to lose weight or wanting to lose weight. The stories of that, man, if Khalil becomes champ, I might cry watching him get the belt put on him, you know?
Yeah, no, I it is a crazy story. Just to see the pictures of the way that he looked before, like you would have never thought that same person would be here.
Of course, yeah.
I hope it happens. I hope it happens, one, because of the story, but two, because of the chaos. I really love the chaos. Selfishly, you know, for the content that we can create out of it, but
right, of course.
But also it just makes the divisions more interesting when you like a lot of different people can be champ, and they really got to fight it out to see. It makes more fights more interesting. Whereas like you look at a division like, oh, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say.
I was just gonna say in a division like lightweight, like where Islam is the champ. Realistically, we kind of think that Islam's going to stick around and be champ for as long as he really wants to. Right. Whereas, you know, a division that is more up in the air, sometimes it brings a little bit more excitement.
I totally agree with you. That's what I was going to say is that, you know, people would look at 55. We were talking about Islam. People would look at 55 and go, that's a stacked division. Look at all those guys, Gaethje, Poirier, and then you got guys all the way down through like 8, 9, and 10 that are killers. Whereas they might look, I mean, guys at 205 are as well, but I feel like people would look at 205 and be like, that division's like 2 more Pereira title defenses from being dead. But if Khalil Rountree, ranked 8th, becomes champ, I think that'll speak more to like the layout of the division being a lot more interesting. Maybe not as dominant of a champion, but much more interesting than 55. Because even the stars at 55, like Gaethje and Islam, or I'm sorry, Gaethje, Poirier, Islam, Oliveira, those guys all are a step below Islam to me, as good as they are.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's plain for even somebody who isn't like super into the sport. They know that. And so that plays into how people view that division when those fights come up. They're like, you know, I'll watch, I guess. But, you know, these other divisions that are, you know, middleweight, like Dricus is the champ, but, you know, a lot of different things. He hasn't been champ that long. A lot of different things can happen. So he isn't as dominant as Islam is, number one pound for pound. So yeah, I just like the chaos, and like I said, content. I love it.
Of course, man. And it is in Salt Lake City. We did see the Leon Edwards head kick there, so we could get another upset in Salt Lake City.
That's true. I wonder if the elevation might play a part in any of these fights. I'm curious if that does anything.
I hate when it does, because then it leaves you with like a bunch of what ifs as, oh, if it was at sea level, if they did this fight in Vegas. But at the end of the day, you know, results are results. But I always get a little, if Pereira, my guy, goes out there and looks gassed in round 1, I'm gonna be bummed, bro. I'm gonna be like, nah,
Yeah.
that should have been in Vegas.
So if he does lose, though, do you think that he gets an immediate rematch?
He shouldn't, but he probably will.
Yeah, I think it's a foregone conclusion. They're gonna give him an immediate rematch, just because like everything that he's done for them at this point, like they kind of owe it to him in a sense.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean,
And if he loses, all of that Jones and Aspinall heavyweight talk is completely off the table too. So they're going to go contenders match. Now we'll put him back in there for a title because Pereira Rountree too would sell way more than Rountree Ankalaev, you know?
yeah, pretty much anything Ankalaev is gonna not sell as well as anything else, almost.
Exactly.
Because
Yeah.
that dude is not a draw, and he basically shit the bed the last time he had a title shot,
And then said he was going to leave the
I
promotion because they
remember
called
that.
it a draw.
Yeah, it's nah. Ankalaev has a hill to climb a little bit. Even if he beats Rakic, there's a possibility they could still skip over him. They could find
100%.
a reason to skip over him.
Yeah.
So on to the co-main.
Yeah.
Not a lot to talk about here, but we will. So we got Raquel Pennington against Juliana Pena. Do you care about this fight at all?
Yes, because it'll get us one step closer to Kayla Harrison. And I think that's a little bit more interesting. But the fight itself, no, it's gonna be 25 minutes of clinch wrestling up against the fence and maybe a little bit of terrible technique boxing exchanges. But I'm basically just excited for what this fight means after, because Kayla Harrison, if she gets through Vieira, then she's going to have the winner of this fight. And I think Harrison smokes Pennington or Pena, whoever she fights. And then they start talking about Nunes coming back and all that. So I'm more excited for what the fight leads to.
So when it comes to Kayla Harrison, like it's almost a foregone conclusion that she's going to get this belt. I mean, I think that Ketlin Vieira is she's a test. She's definitely a test, but there's nothing in her history that says that she's going to not be taken down, in my opinion. Like I don't see how Kayla Harrison does not get a hold of her and take her down. And if she takes her down, like we might as well go ahead and start turning the scorecards and saying this is over, because I just don't see anybody in this division right now that can mirror any of the skills that Larissa Pacheco showed to beat Kayla Harrison. I can't. I don't see it anywhere.
And you know what?
It's kind of sad.
Kayla Harrison is a lightweight technically. So her size difference against these other women is almost like Pereira when he was at 85. But in male fighting, you have the KO power and the explosiveness. Like Izzy was able to catch Alex and KO him. I very highly doubt there's anybody that's gonna, between Pennington, Pena, and Vieira, that's gonna catch Kayla in a way that puts her down or be able to defend a takedown. I mean, you're defending takedowns from somebody that's probably 20 pounds heavier in the cage,
Yeah, I can tell you who has the worst chance of beating her, and it's the one that Lala says should win, that she wants to win, is Pena. I'm like, dude, I can't do it. I want her to lose and go away. I really would love for that to happen. Just lose
Pena?
and leave. Yes.
Yeah, she's kind of like female Chael. She tries to play this like Chael role a little bit on the mic, and I think it's a little cringe, but that's just me.
It's unbelievably cringe. Unbelievably. And to think that if she beats her, she's going to be a 2-time champ if she beats her. Like, we're going to have to hear that for a long time.
Are we talking Juliana Pena women's GOAT status?
She's going to say it. She's going to say it for sure. But I'm like, nah, you're like, even if she won, I would say you're on the level of Carla Esparza, in my opinion. That's another 2-time champ who's fighting on this card in a retirement fight that people are going to get up and get beers during. But I don't know, man. I don't want to hear her strut around with that at all. It's just she's very annoying to me.
Nah, I hear you.
So another fight on the card that I think is interesting. I'm curious what you think about it. Is the Wonderboy Thompson versus Joaquin Buckley fight. How do you think that fight plays out?
I think that it's going to be a super dominant showing for Joaquin Buckley, to be honest.
Really? How do you think he gets it done though? Like,
I think so what I liked about him with Nursultan Ruzaboyev was just bigger guy, harder to get lower base to defend those takedowns. Joaquin Buckley's not a tall guy. I think he comes in with some very aggressive, those like Mike Tyson boxing combos he likes to throw with the big meaty hooks. I think he backs Wonderboy up to the fence and takes him down and beats him up. I think he's going to do like kind of a Nursultan Ruzaboyev approach, but Ruzaboyev would throw up triangles from bottom. He would try to snatch guillotines on the takedowns. And this is kind of a hot take, but I think as an opponent to Buckley, Ruzaboyev actually posed more of a threat than Thompson did. I think that Thompson,
interesting.
And I know this, I might be terribly embarrassed come Saturday night, but I think it's going to be Saturday night's going to be a conversation of like, should Wonderboy still be fighting? He looked really slow against an up and comer. So I think I believe in Joaquin Buckley a lot at 170. Maybe I'm delusional in that because I believed in Kevin Holland a lot at 170 and he failed me. But I think Buckley's physicality is going to play a big difference.
Yeah. I believed that Kevin Holland was a top 5. He had a top 5 caliber fighter at 170, and that is not what he showed me at all.
Me too.
But Buckley is kind of doing what I thought that Holland was going to do. But I do like that he's infused a lot of his wrestling because he does have more physicality in this division, and he's still short in this division. I don't know how he was fighting at middleweight. And getting by with that disadvantage, but I mean it's the power. But I kind of agree with you though. I do. If Wonderboy's speed is not his advantage, then what advantage does he have anymore? What else does he do? So like if he's not able to outspeed him, which I'm thinking about football. Joaquin Buckley is he is pretty quick, but I think that if Wonderboy can't outsmart him and outgun him in the speed category, I think we might need to talk about that. I don't want to see him go down the route of taking other fights and then we really start to see the decline. If this is it, like I think he should just get out while the getting is good. Losing to Buckley is not a bad thing. Now, if he goes out there and gets, Impa Kasangane, like, then yeah, you should walk out of the arena and go home immediately.
Yeah.
But, I don't think it's gonna go like that, but I do think he might get wrestled and controlled and just I don't know, just outmanned in there when it comes to fighting this one.
That's what I think too. I have a question for you regarding that fight though. So Thompson, they were talking about Ian Gary or MVP. Those are definitely more high profile matchups than Buckley. With them booking him against Buckley, do you think that they're just going to, if he sticks around, do you think Wonderboy is going to be used to build build up guys' names and they're not going to do those high profile fights? Because I feel like MVP or Ian Gary would have been a fire fight night main event or like pay-per-view co-main,
I could still see the MVP fight happening. Even with a loss, to be honest, I could still see the MVP fight happening, but the fight, it'll be few and far between. Like it would be really hand picking the fights that he fights in because of the fan favorite. I don't think they want to put him in there with somebody that's just going to maul him unless, it's a situation where he's moving up the ladder to try to get to a title, which I feel like that's out the window at this point. So I think that it will be fun fights,
Right.
MVP, Masvidal, if he comes back. I don't really want to see this fight, but Masvidal could be one, but things like that. He could stick around and do that because I still think he can fight, but a lot will be told here because once you cross that 40 threshold, the things you think you can do, your mind says you can do it, but your body is like, nah, I don't know if we can do that no more.
Yeah,
So,
like he's not Tony Ferguson yet, but it's still heading that
no,
direction in terms of he's 43 or 42, you know?
yeah, Tony Ferguson, Chandler kicked his youth out of his head.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, man.
Another person that is a little bit long in the tooth, Jose Aldo fight Mario Bautista. So first, how do you think that fight's going to go? But secondly, if Jose Aldo wins, how close do you think he would be to a title shot?
Okay, so I think this is going to be a lot tougher of a matchup than the Martinez fight that he had at 301, because I think Bautista's a little bit more of like aggressive boxing, can come forward with that marauding style a little bit. He's an aggressive guy, power takedowns at times, whereas Martinez chops at the leg, and it's a little bit more of like a slow, like death by 1,000 cuts type of performance. And I think that Martinez versus Aldo, it's like, okay, we're playing a leg kick and boxing game. I'm going to go with Aldo. But with that said, Mario Batista is a much tougher opponent, Jose Aldo, than Martinez. I also think that the moment got to Martinez a little bit with it being co-main event of a pay-per-view against a guy you grew up watching that's in your weight class. But with that said, I think we're going to get a vintage Jose Aldo performance, defend the takedown, box him up, and show that he still got it. Or at least that's what my heart wants. I'm hoping that's what happens. And if he does win, let me look at these rankings real quick. I think he's got to be right there because they did him kind of dirty because he beat Cheeto and he's ranked below Cheeto. He gave Peter Yan a test. You know, it got away from him as the fight went on. And then even though it was boring, he did defend all of Merab's takedowns in a loss. And I think after this fight, they either do like a Cejudo or a title shot. I think that's kind of it, because I think O'Malley and Sandhagen are going to fight. Figueiredo's booked. Peter Yan's booked. Umar's going to fight Merab. I think it's Cejudo or title shot for Aldo if he wins.
Yep, like you kind of nailed the one that I was thinking. I think that if he wins this fight, it's Henry Cejudo. Like that's a Legends fight right there. That is a Legends fight. And Henry Cejudo is not in the same stratosphere, in my opinion, as Jose Aldo. Just for the record, for everybody that's watching and listening, Jose Aldo is in my top 5 all time. He's 5, but he's in my top 5.
Let's go.
So Henry Cejudo doesn't sniff that, but I do think that Henry Cejudo, he did work. You know, he did work while he was, you know, being cringy, you know, with his Triple C stuff. I don't know if y'all know that he did win a Olympic gold medal. Not sure if anybody knows about that.
Yeah,
but,
way back.
Yeah. So like, I think that would be an amazing Legends fight. It could be a co-main. It could be the third on a card. I wouldn't put it as a fight night because I feel like that's almost disrespectful a little bit. I feel like they need more of an audience than that, but that's a majorly big fight for the small guys. So if he wins this, that to me is the fight to make.
If Cejudo stays at 35, I agree, because he did kind of faint about 25 a little bit after or actually recently he talked about 25. If I was him and I was down and he's down to cut that weight, I'd go down to 25. I think he's too small for 45, 35. And like when he was calling out O'Malley, I was like, come on, dude, you're not going to beat Sean O'Malley. He's going to defend the takedown and KO you at range. But maybe that's just me glazing O'Malley a little bit too much, because we didn't see him do too well against a heavy wrestler, Merab. So, but sorry, short answer. Yeah, dude, I agree with you. Aldo and Cejudo is a perfect like third fight on the main card, maybe even a main card opener, because, you know, they tend to structure the cards weird where they go banger to open the main card and then they go women's fight that most people don't care about, and then they get back into like the fire fights, you know?
Yeah, for sure. That is I don't know. It is weird how they do it, and then they'll switch the way that they do it. I don't know. It's weird, man. And we've had like these two massive events this year, UFC 300 and the Sphere, where
Mhm.
it kind of throws you off on what their line of thinking and the way that they order things is. I don't know, man. I don't know what they're doing half the time. I think I
Yeah.
know, but they change it
The
up
UFC's
on
gone corporate, man. Disney owns them, you know?
dude. Yes. You know what? This is like totally off the subject, but I'm
Yeah.
curious. Like, obviously, their deal with ESPN comes up, or is up in 2025. Do you think that they should stick with ESPN, or do you think that they should leave and maybe even spread the wealth and do this NFL type thing where it's on Amazon and Netflix and yada yada yada? What do you think they should do?
I think they're going to stick with ESPN. I'll preface it with that, but I've talked about it on live streams a couple times. I think that the pay-per-view model is on its way out in the next 5 years, maybe. And I think that especially you have these younger people coming up. Like I've talked about why Sean O'Malley is not a profitable star. It's because his age group of fans is like 15 to 22. And those guys aren't going to spend $80 on a pay-per-view. They're going to stream it. So I think that a way to tap into that audience, personally, in a perfect world, I'd be like, put everything on UFC Fight Pass, fight nights, pay-per-views, and let me pay like $60 a month for it. So instead of ESPN Plus membership, UFC Fight Pass, pay-per-view, $80, sometimes twice a month. October, we got 2 pay-per-views. And I would, in a perfect world, they would go behind like their own paywall and do it, like some 50 or $60 a month and you get everything. But
Mm-hmm.
what I think they're going to do, and the reason I say that is because I think the pay-per-view model is dated and it's on its way out. Given the way that, I'm 26, man. Everyone that is within 5 years of my age, up or down, is streaming the fight. They're watching them out east, as we say on my stream. And I feel like it's like, okay, you can either do away with the pay-per-view model, lose those sales, but potentially bring in a lot more revenue because the people that are buying pay-per-views would pay a monthly subscription. And then maybe these other people that are pirated streaming, you could bring in those customers too. But what do I know? I'm just a guy sitting at a desk in my room,
I mean, I think I agree with you, because they're not able to tap into those markets where a lot of their fighters are profitable.
Right.
For example, Sean, those people they don't have that kind of money to spend on pay-per-views. They just don't. And so they want to see it, so they're going to do it by any means necessary. I don't blame them. Or even, people who are a little bit older who have other responsibilities, but they still want to watch the fight. They're like,
Of
well, if
course.
there's another way to watch it, I'm going to go on Reddit and see, what did Reddit say? Is this a place? Can I go here to watch it? Can I go there to watch it? Like, and you really can't blame them. And I don't see how the UFC can stop them. They have to change their model. And it's getting more and more expensive every single time. We are, I'm quite a bit older than you, and I would say that we try to buy as many as we can,
Right.
but sometimes we can't, and we got other responsibilities, and it sucks. So I don't know. I feel like they can do something about that. I have been angling for them to go towards Netflix. I would love to get for them to do that, because I feel like they can tap into other markets, have more visibility with people who don't have the ESPN app or don't have a traditional cable package or whatnot. Um, I feel like that's a really good way to get those stories that you were talking about, get those out to people so they can see, what these fighters are away, because that's how they get into the sport anyway. It's normally, I like this fighter, I like Dustin Poirier because I saw him on Fightville, and so I started following his story, and then I got exposed to all these other people. That's how people get into these sorts of things. So they could play into that, and I feel like they could spread it out to where they could do. I got the Ultimate Fighter on Netflix, and I have Contender Series on Amazon. Whatever.
Yeah.
I think that they could possibly do that, It does spread their thing out, but to be honest, ESPN, it's kind of a shitty app now. It's there's a lot of things that don't work, a lot of people that complain about it, and a lot of people who have valid complaints when they do complain about it. So I don't know. I know they're going to go where the money is, but there's other options. But I do think the pay per view is a dinosaur, and it should go away.
Yeah, I think so too. A couple points actually that popped in my head while you were talking about the streaming deal. One, I mean, you know, the UFC and WWE are under the same ownership with TKO Holdings Group now, and WWE signed with Netflix Monday Night Raw. I mean, I don't watch wrestling, but it's funny, as an MMA fan, I have to preface talking about WWE by saying I don't watch it. My best friend watches it though, so I'm plugged in a little bit. But and sorry, no offense if you are a WWE fan. I mean no harm.
No, I mean I watched it when I was young, when it was WWF, and you know, but I respect what they do. You know.
Oh yeah, it's still it's combat theater, but it's still combat. You know.
Yep.
But in regards to that, you know, Monday Night Raw is now going to be on Netflix. So Netflix and Netflix is also doing the Jake Paul Mike Tyson fight in November. So they've shown an interest in live sports. They're already taking WWE, so the same, you know, parent company that could play an influence. And then so I definitely could see Netflix being a possibility. And then also in regards to the streaming deals, I think this is a big holdup with Conor fighting. I think that's why Conor's not fighting this year, is because I think they want to go into these negotiations and say, look, this deal will get you 2 Conor fights, not just 1, but 2. And I think that's why they held him out. But, or I mean, once he got hurt, they had to pull him out. I'm not saying there's any conspiratorial thing about an injury or maybe Conor not being committed and pulling out of 303. But once he pulled out of 303, I think the UFC was like, okay, he's for sure not fighting this year. We're going to leverage him in these negotiations.
Yeah. No, that totally makes sense too. And the deal that the WWE did, or TKO group did with Netflix, that's what made me really think, okay, I think that they might go this direction. And this is kind of the guinea pig for the UFC to see, okay, can you guys really do consistent live events? Because I've seen live events on Netflix, and right now they're not good at all. Not from the standpoint of the people doing the live event, but how Netflix is transferring it from a technological standpoint. Like, it shouldn't be that difficult. I don't know why they have so much trouble. And
right.
You know how it is. If we're watching a fight and then, you know, something happens and we miss 15 seconds of the fight, we're going to say something. We're going to complain.
That could ruin your night.
Smooth all that stuff out.
It could ruin your night. You miss a knockout or you miss your favorite fighter getting a KO. And also, you mentioned the ESPN app being trashy, bro. I get logged out of my every single time that I go to watch a fight night on ESPN Plus. I have to like re-log in, or it'll crash and say I don't have a membership and stuff like that. It's
Dude, it's ridiculous. It is absolutely ridiculous. We have issues with that stuff all the time, especially if like you're okay, I bought the fight on my phone, but I want to watch it on my TV. I go to the app and it's like, I don't even know who you are right now. I'm like, for real?
I've had the same experience, bro. I'm like, hey, you're making me cough up $80. I mean, if I am buying it, making me cough up $80, that shit better work, or I'm asking for a refund.
Yeah, it's like, you want me to do it the right way, and I do it the right way, and this is what you do. Like, come on.
Yeah, exactly. There's just the UFC and ESPN being a little out of touch with the fan base.
For real. Absolutely. Cool. Well, yeah. Before we jump off, obviously, Fight Society, y'all, your stream over there is amazing. Your videos are amazing. But is there anything that you want to say to the Making the Walk people before we jump off?
Oh, well, first off, thank you for the compliments, man. I really appreciate that. And in terms of the Making the Walk people, guys, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for accepting me as a new face on your channel, hopefully. And if you guys want to check me out, you can check me out at Fight Society on YouTube. And I do a non-MMA podcast called What's Up, Bro, with Wyatt and Bo. And yeah, so that's where you guys can find me at. Thank you to you, Jax. I appreciate you for having me on and reaching out and all of that. Had a fantastic time on here. You're an easy guy to talk to, and I definitely hope we can do it again. And I'll have you on my channel too. I'd love to do that.
For sure. Absolutely. Anytime. Anytime.